Amnesty International Southern Africa Director Deprose Muchena joins us now live on ENCA Now to talk further about this. Mr. Muchena, a very good morning to you. Thank you for coming in. So you have put forward these recommendations, 7 of them. What are they?
Well, first of all, it's very important that this historic election breaks with the past that has been characterized by gross human rights abuses ahead of elections. There will be a lot of people who are not going to be able to vote today, not because they did not register to vote, but they were killed in previous election contests. So the idea of the Human Rights Manifesto is to present a set of issues that candidates and political parties should tackle, but also implement after elections. One is addressing the question of impunity for gross human rights violations that took place. There are people like Kane Kala, Tondera Indira, Richard Chiminya, Talen Mabika. These are people who were tortured, gruesomely killed, but never really investigated. The cases were not investigated. Today we are going to another election as if nothing happened. So we're saying the first thing that we are committing candidates to promise and to do when they get into power is to investigate past crimes. The second is to ensure that there is freedom of expression guaranteed. As you know, in Zimbabwe, after 2000, there was a creation of a panoply of legislation: Public Order and Security Act, the Access to Information and Protection of Privacy Act, the Broadcasting Services Act. These pieces of law have had the impact of limiting space for expression by political parties, civil society groups, and anybody perceived to be opposition. These have curtailed freedoms for many Zimbabweans, and as a result, in this election, it should be a break with that past. The third is, of course, the 2013 Constitution now guarantees socio-economic rights, but we continue to see series of evictions forcibly undertaken on poor people who live in peri-urban areas, in urban areas, and so on. We are saying this is an election that should be guaranteeing protection of socio-economic rights, because if we don't do so, then the new beginning that many voters are expecting will not happen. Third, we've also said that it's very important in this election to put a priority and a focus on women's rights that, as you know, have been one of the biggest problems in Zimbabwe, when women who constitute the majority of the population have either not been able to be benefits of any economic growth or have become continued victims of patriarchy, including in this very election when political rhetoric has soared to very high levels. And I think it's important that we reconstitute a social contract that says this is an election about putting women and young girls in the election. And in our manifesto, we actually talk about access to sexual reproductive rights, which are continuously curtailed. A fifth of maternal mortality today in Zimbabwe affects girls between the ages of 15 and 19. And these are issues that we want to be part of the conversation in the election and part of the post-election social contract, so that Zimbabwe really achieves a new beginning.
But when you look at the problems in Zimbabwe and what has been said now in the run-up to Monday's vote, a lot of the focus has been on issues of the economy, health, education, and you wonder why it is then that we aren't hearing enough talk about issues such as the disappearance of an Idai Zamara, for example, who has captured the minds of many other people outside of Zimbabwe, yet now when the country says it's at the beginning of, to borrow from South Africa, a new dawn, that isn't spoken about, and there isn't an attempt to bring finality to those cases.
Exactly, and that's exactly what we're saying. This election is a reminder that you have from the 80s impunity in violations of human rights for many people. Shefra Zamara, the wife of Itai Zamara, would be looking at this election and say, whom am I going to vote with? Because the case of Itai Zamara has not been concluded. There's been a stone-deaf silence on the part of the government not investigating the case. And yet many people are coming forward saying they know who abducted him. Itai Zamara represents masses, thousands of people who have gone through similar circumstances, going back to the era of Gukurahundi. And so I think it's very, very important that Zimbabweans look at this not just as a dawn of a new era, but it could actually become a dawn of a new era, which is a dawn of a new mistake if we don't commit the political candidates to an election that is prioritizing rights. You spoke about the economy. Yes, it is very important that the economy works for people, but the economy only can work for people if the economy is managed in such a manner that the proceeds of economic growth are going into addressing the problem in Harare, the triple burden of unemployment, poverty, and gross inequality that now divides the nation. And in the election campaigning period, we are hearing less of that. And I think this manifesto is a reminder to say if we don't discuss that, then there's no social contract that emerge to ensure that we have a Zimbabwe that works for all.
I want to run something past you. On one of our programs here on ENCA last night, we had a representative from the ZANU-PF Youth League. And when the issue of past rights abuses in Zimbabwe came up, the one thing she said was no one is perfect in Zimbabwe, and perhaps this is the time to let bygones be bygones. What does that mean for a country that is trying to now rebuild and move forward as a proper democratic state?
Well, bygones cannot be bygones if you have a missing member of the family and there is no explanation to what happened to a member of the family. They cannot be bygones. Zimbabwe can only reconstruct and reset on the basis of truth, on the basis of justice, and a reconstruction program that commits a new state into addressing a panoply of a comprehensive human rights program. That's what Amnesty International is saying. It will be very, very difficult to try and paper over the problems of the past because we are trying to embrace some new. This new dispensation, the new framework, has to be based on a commitment to addressing things that concern people now at the economic level, the distribution of proceeds of economic development, access to jobs for young people, quality healthcare, quality education. These are problems that affect a particular group of people and not all the people. So I think a bygone be bygone mantra works only when there is a commitment to redressing past injustices, including present ones that are taking place. We continue to see a deployment of selective application of the rule of law in pockets of the country, even in the context of appearance of a more peaceful progress towards this election.
There's just so much we could discuss as far as rights abuses and building a democratic state is concerned in Zimbabwe, but we are terribly out of time. But I will thank you for your time. We will have you once again on ENCA as we continue to build up to those elections in Zimbabwe on Monday.